Have you ever spotted something in a theme park and thought, there's gotta be a story behind that? Well, you're in the right place. We're Amanda, Kevin, and Kim, the team behind Where in the Park, and we've spent years exploring the parks, creating seek and find games that uncover the details that most people miss. And now we're diving into the history, stories, and secrets behind those magical details. So grab your curiosity and maybe even a churro, and let's explore the parks together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Where in the Park podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing where in the Knott's Berry Farm Park, as we are diving into how Knott got its start. As we go through today's episode, we'll be sharing some stories and details around the park, some of which you can still see today. So, to see these pictures of the details that we'll be covering, just head over to our Facebook group, Where in the Park Explorers. There you can join in the conversation and even share your own pictures and stories. The links are in the show notes below, so get plugged in. Before we get started, let's say hi to the rest of the team. You have my mom, Kim.
Hello.
And you have Kevin, my husband, Kevin.
Everybody, how's it going?
Awesome. And I am Amanda, of course, and we are the Where in the Park team. If you have not heard of Where in the Park, welcome. We make self-paced seek and find games that highlight the details in the theming of theme parks. Each game pack has a deck of cards. Each card has an image, and that image is found somewhere in the park. Question is, where in the park? We have 18 theme parks and counting, so be sure to head over to whereinthepark.com and use code podcast10 to take 10% off your next adventure.
Talking about Where in the Park, back when we first started it, we were exclusively Disneyland. That's where we had done scavenger hunt kind of adventures in parks like that we didn't create. We'd experienced them in that park. So that's what we started as. We were like, hey guys, here are games you can play at Disneyland. They're a lot of fun. We would do live in-person events. And one of the biggest suggestions that we would get, it was like a suggestion or a question depending on who was bringing it up, but the point was, hey, you guys should have games for Knott's Berry Farm. And I love Knott's Berry Farm. I don't know, like Amanda and Kim didn't go there as often as I probably did when I was growing up. But when people are saying that, I'm like, hey, I love having a new reason to go to Knott's Berry Farm. So we went there and we started taking photos all around that park. And it was pretty quick that we realized that, yes, this is going to work here. It's not just a Disney thing. This is definitely a theme park game. And Knott's Berry Farm has details all over the place. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it expanded our our roster to 3 parks. So we had Disneyland California Adventure as well as Knott's Berry Farm. And like Amanda said, we've now grown to 18 parks and we're still growing. But yeah, so we wanted to go ahead and talk about Knott's Berry Farm here on our pod. Saying that, it's important to kind of give more of a history behind why Knott's exists. Especially if you've never been there before, it will help you to understand kind of what the mystery is behind that park. It is definitely an odd park. I'm trying to think of all the other parks that we've been to. There's probably a few where this isn't true, but the majority of non-Disney parks that exist here in the United States, they all have a common history. Whether it's Worlds of Fun Kansas City, Carowinds Park over on the border of North and South Carolina, even the original Six Flags Park, the Six Flags over Texas, and the Enchanted Forest up in Salem, Oregon, this little amazing family park, they all had the same exact story of there was a person who went to Disneyland and then they went back home and thought, hey, we can build this here. And that's very common. Like if you look up the history on many theme parks that are in your local areas, if you aren't in the Southern California area, it'll have someone saying that that's the reason why they built that park. But at Knott's, it grew gradually over time to become that park. And it started long before Disneyland was even a thought in Walt's head. It goes back to roughly 1920. That's, I believe, the official line that the Knott's corporate is going to say, or Theater Fair or Six Flags nowadays. It's still contentious with some people, but it's true. It's part of the Six Flags, at least the stock ticker. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Walter Knott, 1920. He actually was a farmer like on his own land that was failing, and his cousin Jim Preston was starting to work on a farm over in Orange County over at Buena Park. So they had a handshake deal with the guy who owned that land. His name was William H. Coffrin. So what ended up being a 7-year lease, because it was like a 5-year lease plus a 2-year extension. It's kind of funny details on how the world worked back then, I guess. But Well, Walter and his cousin were growing crops on that land. This is still the land where you're going to find that theme park today. And it's funny because pretty early on, the thing that they were selling the most of were things called advanced blackberries and young berries. Those were the big sellers over there at that little patch of berries. It wouldn't be until about 3 years later that they would even put in a berry stand on that property to sell berries there. They were just trying to grow them, and then they were selling to local businesses. But then they became a roadside attraction essentially back in 1923, I suppose. But yeah, so it was 4 years later that Knott's lease was up. So 3 years they made the stand. 4 years later, the lease was up. Walter and his cousin actually ended their partnership. His cousin decided, I don't want to be in the berry game anymore, and he left. But Walter, luckily for us, was able to buy 10 acres of land from William Coffrin's. Actually, I believe at that point it was William Coffrin's son, because William Coffrin had actually passed away by that point. He leased the land. He didn't get to buy it. He leased it and was paying interest on it. And he started to reinvest in that property. So it wasn't until 1928 that the first structure was built over on Grand Avenue. That's where you'll find Knott's Berry Farm today, and you'll find those buildings still there today, where they built an 80-foot business frontage that was named Knott's Berry Place. So this is before it became what we know today, obviously. They had a little bit of room for a nursery for selling berry plants. They had a berry market and a tea room where Walter's wife, Cordelia, or Cordelia, depending on who you talk to, would sell sandwiches, jam, and fresh berry pie. Keep in mind that the berries were advanced blackberries and young berries at that point in time. So sales were okay at the berry place, but it was coming up on the Great Depression in 1929, and that made things challenging for everyone. But instead of giving up, Walter actually bought 10 more acres of land when the land prices in Buena Park dropped and negotiated for more land over the following years, which is how you end up getting enough land for what you know today. For Kim, would you want to continue the story so I'm not the only person here blabbering?
Absolutely. So, way to go, Walter. Man, times were tough, but he would definitely was like, I know what I'm doing. I'm investing. Way to go. So now you guys know about Knott's Berry Farm, and you've likely heard about boysenberries, because before they were just doing those advanced blackberries and the young berries, which I've never heard of. But it wasn't until about 1932 that Walter was introduced to a man named George Darrow. And he heard about this guy, Mr. Boysen, who had created this new berry. So they broke out the good old handy dandy phone book. Yeah, back in the day, you had a book with names and numbers on it. And they found a Rudolph Boysen that was in Anaheim, who shared that although he had experimented with these berries, he had left them behind on the previous property that he owned. So basically, him and Darrow and Knotts went to that property together, and they found there was one berry plant that was like in a ditch, and there was no berries on it whatsoever. So Boysen explained that it was a cross between a red raspberry, a blackberry, and a loganberry. I don't think I've had a loganberry either. They obtained permission from the new property owners to take the cuttings from that plant back to Buena Park to cultivate. Can you imagine just here's this dead plant and you're going to try and bring it back to life? But just 1 year later, huge berries started to grow. And Walter named them boysenberries after Rudolph Boysen, since he was the creator. By 1934, just 2 years later, there was enough cuttings and berries to introduce boysenberries as a commercial product, and Cordelia added them to her tea room menu. It was an instant hit. Could you imagine just something brand new? People are going to flock to taste this. Boysenberries were sold by the pound and in boysenberry pies, and you could get the whole pie or even just buy the slice. The berries eventually came to be the main crop grown on the farm. But despite the boysenberry sales, Knott's family was still struggling because it was still the Great Depression after all, and they had to do something. And that's when Cordelia had an idea to start selling fried chicken in the tea room to try and make the ends meet. So in June of 1934, Cordelia served 8 chicken dinners on her best wedding china at about 65 cents each. By 1937, the average number of dinners served was 1,240 per weekend. That's including 1,774 dinners on Thanksgiving Day. That's crazy. In 3 years, that chicken must be dang good. In 1937, the tea room started year-round operations as a full restaurant, complete with a separate kitchen, dining rooms, and parking lots. To be clear, though, the Knotts didn't have a chicken ranch on their berry farm. As the demand grew, they would source their chickens from dozens of different local vendors or ranchers, where Cordelia had specific things for her chickens. She needed them to be 3.5 pounds. They needed to be Rhode Island Red and Plymouth Rock fowls. Not quite sure why it was just that, but apparently that's what her parameters were, and that was some darn good chicken. It isn't clear when the eldest Knott daughter, Virginia, set up the card table in the lobby of the dining room to sell small novelties and gifts. But we do know that around 1939, the restaurant had expanded and Virginia was given space of her very own gift shop. So Amanda, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So Knott's Berry Place is selling the chicken dinners year round. And obviously, like you said, people are going to flock to this new location, or not necessarily new location, but they have this fabulous chicken and these amazing boysenberry pies. And so guests were waiting over 3 hours for a table, which is just crazy. So it was these crowds of people that were waiting for these tables that led Walter to start adding attractions to keep people entertained while they waited. And at this point, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great. But what does that have to do with the theme park today? Well, the area that we've been describing is where you'll find Knott, California Marketplace today. There's still a berry market. There's still the chicken dinner restaurant. It's still called that, the chicken dinner restaurant, and Virginia's gift shop. It's in this shopping area located outside the gate of the theme park. And it is an area that predates Universal City Walk and Downtown Disney by over half a century. So this is like the precursor to what would be known as the outdoor shopping area, the outdoor district, outside of the theme parks, which is just wild to think about during this time. And although the looks of the buildings have changed over time, the concept is still the same. You can still buy jams and jellies. You can still enjoy the wonderful chicken dinner and find delightful novelties in the gift shops in the same location as you would back in 1938. So in the gift shops today, you can find information and photos along the walls that outline the history of the Knotts family and the beginnings of Knott's Berry Farms. They've remodeled it so you can just be in the gift shop and just look at all of the photos from over the years and kind of a timeline of how the Knott family came to this property and built Knott's Berry Farm and how we see it today. So there you go. There's a history of Knott's Berry Farm in a nutshell. And it's just wild to me that it's in the same exact location.
Definitely. And I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about the attractions that were built in the park
Of course.
at a later time. We just wanted to give a kind of the groundwork here as far as why it exists today and how it is different than every other theme park on the planet. Obviously, Walter Knott was a berry farmer, but he was also a very, I don't know, he was a tinkerer, I guess it feels like, where he came up with these funny ideas of like, how about if we add this over here for people to enjoy while they're waiting for their chicken dinners? And people liked it. So like it started with like a rock garden, I believe, that is still technically at the park, but it's behind closed doors you can't get to anymore. It's a rock garden, actual like gardens, and there's like a recreation of George Washington's fireplace for some reason. I'm not really sure exactly what the draw was for everything, but it was a different era, and he went to Mount Vernon and thought, hey, that would look great at our, not a theme park at the time, in his head, But as far as like at the Knott's Berry place, this would be really fun for people to. So yeah, that's kind of how things kind of slowly grew. Obviously, we're going to touch on Ghost Town and Marion Knott and her expansion of the park into Fiesta Village and the Roaring Twenties and all kinds of fun stuff later in our episodes as we go forward with this wonderful podcast we're building.
I really think if you have the opportunity, do go to that gift shop and just take a walk down memory lane of the history of the park and how it started. They have pictures, they have news articles, they have drawings of what the park was originally starting to become and all the way up to today. And they have some posters and stuff. It's on two sides, two different walls. And it's really, you can stand there and look at it for quite some time. And you're like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't know that. And that's still there. And so it was kind of neat to take a look at that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I mean, I know for a fact that we can go back there next time and discover something new because we only scratched the surface of all of the details that those walls had to share. So yeah, lots more to discuss with Knott's Berry Farm. But yeah, the marketplace is open to everybody. You don't need a park entry ticket to experience it. So you just need to pay for parking, or if you live nearby, park across the street or whatever and just walk on over. Sure, they love that. But yeah, you can just go walk over to Grand Avenue and experience the marketplace. There's other gift shops in that area as well now. But yeah, go experience a little bit of history. So that's all that we have on the beginnings of Knott's Berry Farm for this episode. Be sure to tune into our upcoming episodes as we dive into more history, stories, and secrets of Knott's Berry Farm. Thanks so much for listening. Just a reminder, if you want to see the details that we were discussing in today's episode, head on over to our Facebook group, Where in the Park Explorers, where you can join the conversation and even share your own pictures and stories. The link is in our show notes below. And until next time, we'll see you somewhere in the park. Bye for now. Thanks for exploring with us today. If you're ready to take your park experience to the next level, check out our Where in the Park games. They're self-paced seek and find adventures designed to help you explore the parks in a whole new way, whether you're visiting for a birthday, a family gathering, a date night, or even a solo trip. You won't find our images on rides, in lines, or inside shops or restaurants. They're just out in the open as you wander around the park. Get ready to experience a deeper appreciation for your favorite theme parks. Head over to whereinthepark.com and use code PODCAST10 to take 10% off your next adventure. Until next time, we'll see you somewhere in the park.